What is going on, YouTube? Welcome to a day in the life. So I've had a couple of asks for this video over the last few weeks, and quite honestly, it's been very busy, and I do not like vlogging. I'm not very good at it. I find it very tedious to vlog all day, but I have chosen a day to bring you through everything I'm doing today, everything I'm eating, bring you through my training. So starting off bright and early, it is 7 a.m. This is Maui. Normally I do sleep until like 7:30, 8, but Nikki had a training session this morning, so when she gets up, I typically get up because that means Maui gets up, and Maui wants to be fed, so he'll lay on us and lick us until we get out of bed. But 7 a.m., let's get this day going. All right, so every morning we start the day with a cold shower. I am not somebody who's going to advocate that you need to do this. I'm not pro, like, you have to be in cold water. Basically, I like it for my face mostly because it like helps depuff my face a little bit, but also does wake me up. But man, on days like this where it's like 11 degrees outside and covered in snow, the water is freaking cold. All right, so breakfast. Every morning I eat pretty much the same thing. Honestly, when it comes to nutrition, I feel like one of the easiest wins for the day is your breakfast. If you keep it somewhat consistent, you know exactly how much macros you're getting, you know exactly how it's going to make you feel carrying into the hours after, and you know how many calories you're consuming. So I'm a big pro on keeping breakfast somewhat consistent with things that you like. Now, with my breakfast every morning, it's a 3-egg omelet, and then I'll rotate things like the bagel of my choice for my sandwich. So this is a plain Dave's Killer Bread bagel. Usually I will go plain, or I'll rotate that to everything, so it does give me a little bit of variety. And then I'll also do a chicken sausage. So we have wild mushroom with Italian herbs right now. We will rotate those flavors as well, and it's like a nice sneaky way to get a nice variety with my breakfast, but not change too many variables. I'm ripping the chicken sausage up in my hands and sprinkling that in. I feel like a good YouTuber and a good vlogger would show like a nice ASMR cutting scene, but that's not my life, that's not reality, so this is what I do. All right, so the eggs are cooking. I'll also have 2 kiwis, and honestly, I probably eat like anywhere from like 3 to 5 kiwis a day. It's probably not the best financial decision because kiwis can be kind of expensive, but you know what's funny is Jeff Nippard posted this video about kiwis a few years back, and seeing that and seeing like how they could be good for lifting and performance, it's built this like subtle bias in me to always like kiwis for that reason, and also I just love kiwis. And it's funny because it really makes you think like, damn, that piece of content, I don't think he was like intending to necessarily have that much effect on some folks, but here I am literally years later eating kiwis because of a video that was like, yeah, kiwis could be pretty good for lifting performance. Like, how good could they really be? Who freaking really knows when it comes to the context of life? But yeah, I have 2 kiwis now every day for breakfast, and I'll have some more throughout the day, but that's obviously with these skins on. If you eat your kiwis with the skin off, you're a psychopath, and I will fight you because the skin's on is just the way to go. Plus, you get so much more kiwi, you lose so much kiwi when you're cutting it, you try to take the skins off, so skin on. So I feel like today is a really good day to vlog, and I'm actually super stoked to bring you guys through my day. So essentially, gonna have breakfast now, get a coffee, work for a couple of hours, and then I have a buddy coming up from Colorado Springs to do a podcast with down in the shoe cave. I'll show you guys a little behind the scenes of that. And then work for a couple of hours, go train my other friend who's a PT. He's also one of my training buddies that I work out with every week. We're working on my shoulders to get me back to being like healthy enough to snatch heavier weight overhead. So we will do some stuff there. So hopefully there are some nuggets of knowledge within this day. But yeah, I'm gonna slam this breakfast, take the dogs for a walk, and get a coffee. All right, so we are starting our first little bit of computer work today. So podcasting in about an hour and a half, but what I'm doing right now is writing a program for one of my clients. You might not know this, but I still coach clients on the side of running TF2 and now working with Mountain Yodas and doing a couple of other things on the back end. But yeah, I have about like 9 clients at the moment. I keep my list pretty small, and when folks inquire, I generally like steer them to other coaches because I just don't have the bandwidth. And when working with clients, especially online, like I want to make sure I'm able to engage enough to give feedback that is critical for growth when it comes to my programming. So that is what I'm doing right now, and I'm also starting to build out the template for my Flux high top review. The shoe has been just okay, but why I like to start with articles first in the context of building out reviews is, number one, they are easy to edit and update. So I like to put my thoughts on paper, and then as I continue to test the shoe, I try to make a point to go back and update content accordingly, because it is easier to do in articles, obviously, other than videos, because you can't really update a video once it goes live. So I stagger those two, and also the reason I like staggering those two, so I don't script my videos, for example. Like, I'm not reading off a prompter, I'm not reading off a script when it comes to my pros, cons, performance thoughts, because I think it's a little bit more genuine when that kind of comes off the cuff. But having an article too, just to have some basic tenets when it comes to like, okay, this is a pro that I'm gonna have to expand on, it does help a little bit. So I guess in some ways it's kind of like a script, but in reality, like the beef and potatoes that come along with the reviews, that's never scripted. So yeah, just to give you a little insight into how I like to like conceptualize blending article and video review content together. So we are down in the basement, aka the shoe cave, aka my studio and office. As you can see, it is wicked messy, so I have to clean it up. And I don't know if I give off the perception of having my shit together all the time, or like because things look clean because we do shoot this way on videos. But like my office is often like just crazy because with all the shoes coming in and the comparisons and the roundups and whatnot, I'm always pulling different shoes for content or keeping them out because I'm still testing them. Yeah, that's the reality of the situation, but I'm gonna have to clean this up because I obviously don't want to have somebody over in a professional setting with this kind of mess. So I will see you guys in like hopefully 10 to 15 minutes. A lot of configuring going on right now, Brock.
It's a traveling circus is what it is. Yeah, so I'm a man is too much of a hobbyist, so I do more things than I should. But I'm a freelance video editor for real estate agents across the country is what I do for my main profession, which a lot of people don't know. But as far as the cool stuff I do, as far as content and the sort, a lot of athletic content, ultra running, hybrid training, all that kinds of stuff on Instagram. Primarily what we're doing today is a Zero Quit podcast. I started this about 7 months ago, and it's really a chance to just share conversations with entrepreneurs, other content creators, specialists, athletes, all that sort, and yeah, share their stories, get some insights, things of that nature. And yeah, so today, filmed a good podcast talking to the man of shoes, a man of many shoes.
Well, sick, let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, so we just wrapped the podcast. Took about like an hour and a half, but now we're doing lunch before we go train in like the next 50-ish minutes. Have a training session at 1 with my buddy. But for lunch, what we're doing, more eggs. So 3 more eggs, and I'm gonna do 2 of these Vans protein waffles. All right, so for the sake of showing everything I'm doing today, having 2 tangerines also with lunch. We also have some cheddar cheese on those 3 eggs, and a guilty pleasure that I have. RuneScape videos. I probably watch like 4 or 5 RuneScape videos a day. Probably not the healthiest when it comes to my time and how I'm spending it, but goddamn, I love RuneScape videos. But if you have any guilty pleasures that you love watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments. I'm hitting 415 for a 4x4. This week is technically a deload week. I'm gonna pull these beltless. Should be pretty smooth. However, my knee has been bothering me a little bit, so we'll see how that actually feels and translates to performance. Tyler hitting his 1RM. Come on, Nick. Nice. Let's get it, Nick. Nice. Easy. Easy. Back accessories, so we had a cable row, a lat pull down, and some bicep work. I totally forgot to keep the audio on, so I figured I'd do a voiceover. I am just so good at YouTube, and yeah, nice little pump after deadlifts. Perfect little deload week. All right, so I mentioned that we're gonna do some shoulder work today with my friend Tyler. So this is Tyler Khaleesi. He is a PT out here in Colorado, just moved here. But essentially, Tyler is getting my shoulders back to functional use when it comes to catching heavy snatches. I don't have really any shoulder issues when training now, but it is something that always limits me for heavy snatches. That's why I don't typically do them. I'm not that specific with my training, but I would love to get back to a point where I can heavy snatch. So Tyler, could you take us through, so we worked a little bit on my shoulders the other week, based off of what you saw. What did you see, and what are we gonna do today to just kind of like look at the ranges of motion I have and kind of work on some things proactively that you're gonna send me home with some drills and whatnot?
Yeah, so when we looked at it last week, we kind of did like a really brief assessment, and we saw that there was some lacking range of motion on one side and actually an excessive range of motion on the other side, meaning one shoulder kind of was moving really freely and the other one was moving less freely. And you would think the one that was more restricted would have the most issues, but with Jake, we kind of saw that that shoulder, left one, right, if I remember correctly, that left shoulder had a lot of movement, and it's actually kind of playing into his discomfort. So a combination of coordination and some stability work and actually some thoracic mobility are all the things that we feel like we need to address over the next couple of weeks to kind of progress that shoulder to be a little bit more ready for weight overhead. So we can take a look at your shoulder, your upper body in some really simple ways just to get started to see if there's anything we need to address right away. The simplest one is range of motion and pain-free range of motion. So we'll have you lay down on your back. Okay. The back, laying on the back, the floor gives us like a nice flat surface to work with. We're looking to see how far you can get this shoulder to come back overhead. All right, come back. Nothing hurt there? Let's see this one. Good, come back, nothing hurt there, right? Let's do both arms at the same time. Good, stay there. So he has no pain and the ribs aren't getting really flary. He's getting a full range of motion without discomfort. So range of motion is probably not part of the issue here. All right, come back. Good, so let's go, I'm gonna have you come on like to both knees. Instead of standing up, it'll just be easier to be right here. So we've got a upright trunk. Now I just want you to do the same thing. You're gonna go with both arms out to the side. Good, and go all the way up to where you have to stop. Good, any discomfort here? Good, come back up again. So once again, range of motion is probably not, like limited range of motion is probably not an issue. Come back down. Good. So now we're gonna go forward and you're gonna face the camera. We're gonna go on all fours and we're gonna look at thoracic, so mid-spine range of motion, because if you're limited in how well your spine can move this way or this way, it's gonna play a role in how your shoulder moves, right? If I'm trying to get overhead and I can't extend my spine really well, then my shoulders have to do extra work, which is fine, but after hundreds, thousands of reps, it might start bothering you, especially when it's loaded. So we're gonna take a look at your thoracic rotation. So go ahead and get on all fours, nice and flat. Put one hand behind your head here. Good, and all you're gonna do is bring your elbow down towards your thumb. Without moving your body, you're gonna bring and rotate towards me as far as you can. Good, and then come back down. So that one's kind of a warm up. You're gonna come back on, make sure you're not holding your breath. Come back as high as you can. So if we look right to the top of my hip there, good. Let's do the other side. Little warm up there, don't hold your breath.
I'm a fucking classic lifter.
Yeah. So there is a slight difference. If you guys look at my hips good, you can rest. We're about an inch and a half of less rotation towards his left. Okay, so think about that. He has less rotation towards the left. And rotation is very similar to extension. We need both to get overhead appropriately, at least repetitively. You do it once or twice with limited rotation, you're gonna be fine. So last week, we noticed Jake had excessive range of motion in his left shoulder. Excessive being just more than the right. He has a lot of range of motion here. It doesn't bother him usually, but when he starts to load it and move through cycling snatches, it starts to become bothersome because it's a little loosey-goosey. Part of the theory could be, well, there's a history of things that happen and that plays into it, but it also could be limitations in rotation here and a little bit of limitation this way forces his shoulder to have to do more work this way. Now he's athletic, he's strong, he's, fine most of the time, but when the reps start to build up and the weight starts to build up, the body's like, yeah, we can't handle that.
And just to add to that too, when we did that rotation right there, I wanted to let Tyler explain as well, but I felt more pressure in like my post delt or like the back of the shoulder versus this side, because it felt like to get that range of motion, I had to crank this shoulder to a place where it basically didn't feel comfortable. So that's a big thing that we've been addressing, because this is the shoulder that's been dislocated a couple of times from snatching. So there's obviously a mental component there as well. But even going into this, I was feeling a little bit of pressure through the back of my shoulder.
Yeah, and that's very similar to what's happening when you're training. Like as you snatch, like I said, you're athletic, that range of motion isn't a huge difference, but when you start loading up reps and over time, weeks and months, the body's like, yeah, we're just doing too much and I don't really like it, right? You're compensating essentially. Now, if you notice a limitation in range of motion in your thoracic spine, or you have one shoulder that's a little bit looser, like don't think you're automatically doomed. You know, there's a lot that plays into it, but this is a good place to start. If you do have discomfort, look at your thoracic range of motion, look at your shoulder pain-free range of motion, and maybe think of maybe I need to gain more stability in one area or more flexibility in another area. So what were you gonna say?
So I was gonna say, I believe we're gonna transition now into a couple of drills that you want me to start implementing based off of kind of what you see with the range of motion, right? Or
Yeah.
how else would you play this if somebody was in this similar situation?
So the main complaint for you was barbell snatches. Cycling barbell snatches are bothersome. So I wanted to take a look at if we increase the stability overhead, if things felt better. Like last week, you remember we used that band. So we can still stay in this kneeling position because it's basically the same as standing up. But if you're gonna do this, I would do it standing up. So go ahead and get in that overhead squat or snatch position with the band. So what's happening right now is we're pulling on the band, creating more like organic stability at the shoulders, right? So this is a good thing to kind of test and see, okay, does this make you feel better than when we use the PVC pipe? Go ahead and relax. And last week you had said, yeah, I actually felt better when I was pulling on the band versus when I just had a PVC pipe overhead.
Yeah.
So that would tell me like, well, his shoulder likes more stability. Maybe it needs more stability. So things like overhead carries, even just doing this, 3-4 sets of 20, 30 seconds, overhead in that good position, good shrug, right? If you have pain, chances are you've probably been avoiding that overhead position. So getting a band where you can change your grip, you can pull a little wider if it feels more comfortable, you're creating compression at the shoulder. I would mix this in to warm up for upper body days or take a rest just a couple of days before you hit a class or your whatever workout you're doing.
Sick. So that being said, if I was going to implement this, I know you just hit on it, but let's say I'm hitting an upper body day. Do you think you should couple this before or after that day, or do you think you should save it for like lower body days when you're a little bit fresher with your shoulders and their overall like capacity?
You know, I would probably do it before your upper body days. Most people are probably doing at least 2 days with upper body, so I would hit at least 2 days of this prior to your training because you're fresh. You're not really irritated. If there's a chance that there's irritation, it's pretty low at this point. So you can move freely and really get good activation early on in your workout as opposed to after you've already kind of made some things mad. So the band overhead is a good place to start because it's simple. There's not a lot of movement. We're adding some compression, and compression was something we felt like you needed, stability in other words. Now, your main complaint was pain that comes on mainly with like heavier or cyclical snatches, right?
Yeah.
So snatch is going from down here to up here. So let's do that in a much more controlled, unloaded situation. For you, if you're listening and you have shoulder discomfort overhead, this could still be a good drill because it is still hitting some rotator cuffs, some scapular muscles, and overhead stability. So I would give it a try after the banded exercise before you hit some overhead or upper body work in general.
Gotcha.
Right? So we're gonna do a little bit of a Cuban press type situation. You're gonna lay here, bring your chest, right about here, and let your shoulders drop. All right? So now I want you to basically row, so your elbows come out at like a 70 degree angle. Good, and come back down again. Let your shoulders go all the way down. And as you row, pull them shoulders back. Good. And then come back down. Notice he's not getting extension. He's not moving his trunk to help him move. He's just moving the shoulders. Come back up. Now hold that. And now externally rotate. Good. Come back down. And then back down. So now we're gonna go one more step and go all the way overhead. But I wanna try to pause for 3 seconds in each position.
Got it.
Okay, so come back up. Try not to hold your breath. 1, 2, 3. Bring it up. 1, 2, 3. Now slowly overhead. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Come back in. Hold this position here. 1, 2, 3. Come back down. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. And then come back down. Take a rest. What did that feel like?
Honestly, not too bad. I think there's definitely a little bit more of like an effort needed for this shoulder to maintain its position. Like even just holding this, like I can feel myself wanting to like rotate more for the shoulder.
Yep.
Whereas this one, it's like, cool, I can hang out here. But yeah, it felt really good pain-wise. I think just this shoulder, I feel it in the back of my shoulder like working a little bit.
So if you feel a sensation, maybe even discomfort, this is very general and obviously not medical advice, but you have to be okay with a little bit. We know your shoulder's irritated. It's been irritated with certain things. We're putting it in a position that we found was irritating. So it's okay to expect I tell folks, like a 3 to 4 out of 10 discomfort. If it stays like that for all 3 or 4 sets that you do this and it doesn't really spike up, you're fine, right? We want to stay below that 3 to 4. But a good way to mediate that is just go one arm.
Yeah.
So just hold on to the bench with one arm, that right arm, somewhere, right, to create a little bit more stability, and now just do the left arm. You can allow a little bit of rotation because your body wants to. Let's just let it happen for a couple of weeks. Come out, good, and then come up.
This already feels a lot better, and
Good.
I think it's because this constraint for sure.
And then come down, and then back. So to review, we said do the banded overhead hold to create some stability overhead and re-familiarize yourself with overhead. Then get this going to, once again, get overhead a little bit more, get some shoulder stability, some rotator cuff work. Normally, when you train, you're gonna progress by adding weight or doing more reps. Here, we're gonna progress by taking away stability. Go back to 2 arms at the same time so you're not holding on. Eventually, maybe now you're not on the bench and you're just one hand on the bench so the chest isn't supported anymore. And then eventually we go away from the bench and now we're just doing it in the air, right? That's how we would progress for a while before we start adding weight.
Gotcha.
And it's really simple. I would start there and just run that until it's dry.
Gotcha. And then final question for you. How do we know when we are okay to start adding some load? So we've done that. We're now using no constraints when it comes to creating additional stability. Once I'm moving up and overhead with these and I don't have any pressure or anything, do you think it would then be okay to start experimenting with some PVC and some barbell when it comes to snatch patterning?
Yeah, I think you can throw in weight somewhere in that process. It's going to change depending on the person. So whether we're talking about doing some very light like muscle snatches or overhead holds with the bar, or even adding some change plates here, I would start mixing that in almost immediately just to try, but realize that weight is not the only way to progress. Is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
So when to load it, you're not going to know until you try. Give it a go, see how it feels the next day. If it's manageable amount of response or discomfort, you can keep loading it.
Sick.
But realize that to progress, there's a lot of different ways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the time, dude. Also, if you want to see more content with Tyler, because he's going to expose all of my weaknesses on this channel and share a lot of awesome knowledge, let me know in the comments below, because Tyler and I train together pretty regularly, and with his knowledge, I think it would be really cool to have him on the channel more regularly, sharing content and ideas and stuff for folks to take home with them to improve their training. But dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was
all
fun.
of Tyler's info is also going to be linked down below, so definitely check him out. Good guy, good resource. So I know I mentioned this earlier, but I'm working with Mountain Yodas in the Denver area, basically working on some review content for the Taco and also helping them out with some YouTube content. This is the current setup on the Taco. We have super winch up in the front, backwoods, high clearance bumper, running Method 701 wheels. These are 34-inch Falcon Wild Peaks. We have the Bilstein 6112 and 5160s on, sliders. We have the Red Rocks roof rack. And then we also have the 23-0 tent. This is the new addition. We'll be reviewing that in the next couple of weeks out in Sedona. And then we also have the backwoods dual swing high clearance bumper. Also, I forgot to mention we have the Sherpa rack on top. I just bought some solar panels to come in and install because this summer we're basically gonna go full nomad for a couple of months. So we're gonna live down in SoCal, we're gonna live out in Arizona before we plant our roots back in Colorado for the late summer. We're also gonna jet up to the Northeast because we have some weddings up there. But the whole idea is to basically be a nomad, film content and reviews on the road, which I think could be really cool. Like shooting training shoe reviews up in the mountains after being tested and whatnot, I think could be a really cool dynamic way to diversify what's on the channel. But yeah, definitely let me know on off-road content, taco content that you'd want to see, because I know that's not obviously my main gig and I'm doing a lot of work with Mountain Yodas, but it is a pretty big part of my hobbies and lifestyle that I would like to implement more into the channel. But yeah, the goal is to honestly be full on nomad up in the mountains for a couple of weeks at a time this summer using Starlink and building out content up there, but I think that will be very fucking cool. All right, so we got back from the gym, consumed some creatine, got a Noon tablet in with my water. That's like a electrolyte solution. And then I picked up some Chipotle. So we have the bowl here, extra white rice, extra cheese, double chicken, side of guac because we are treating ourselves today. And we also have that quesadilla on the side because I like to make a burrito and then have the bowl after and make it basically into 2 meals. But I'm gonna go ahead and eat this, watch another RuneScape video, and then I will see you guys for the update after. I'm gonna do some more work on that article I was writing earlier, but we're also gonna talk about my training right now because that has been a big ask on the channel. So I'm gonna break down all of my training and then we'll probably wrap this video up, but I'll see you guys very soon. All right, so now let's talk about training. So up here I have some goals and then I have a normal breakdown of what my normal week of training looks like. I've had a few asks over the last few weeks for my training and like what that typically looks like because with all the different shoes I review, I have to be very particular with my programs to make sure I'm implementing enough variety to test the shoes that I am currently wearing and reviewing, etc. And so before we do dive into this, I will say 2 things. Number 1, apologies for the lighting. I could not get my ring lights set up accordingly. Did not reflect really bad off of this whiteboard. So if there's anything you can't read, just drop a comment below and I can clarify. And number 2, whether you are a beginner, intermediate, or advanced lifter and athlete and you're watching this, highly suggest getting a coach. A coach is gonna help you get out of your own way, help keep you more objective with your goals. And for the longest time, because I am a coach, I used to program for myself. But more recently, over the last 2 to 3 months, I've been working with Craig from Compound Performance. He is phenomenal at what he does, and I will drop his info down below. But if you're a beginner, it's gonna help you build a foundation, help you learn better mechanics with your lifts because you'll have a coach to help guide you. Intermediate and advanced athletes, it's gonna help you basically get out of your own way and not only just train the things you like to do, which I myself can be guilty of, and I'm a coach and I can recognize that and be aware of that. So it's definitely an awesome asset to have for every lifter and athlete from all walks of life. But let's go ahead and dive into the goals and my current training. So my current goals are to build a bigger clean, build a bigger squat and deadlift, to run faster, build basically a better engine for everything. So whether it's longer hikes we're doing or just running a fast mile, I want to be able to do that and not be completely gassed and winded after. And I also want to look good naked. So have a good body comp throughout this whole process of building towards these goals up here. Now, what does my normal week look like with training? So with training right now, I'm training 5 days a week formally. 1 day is for rest, and then 1 day is for like hiking or like just low threshold activities. Now, I will say with this week, this is not like cut in stone. Not every Monday I power clean, squat, etc. I like to rotate my days a lot, and that is a skill that I've developed over time based off of the shoes I'm testing and my fatigue and energy levels. So these are days that are an example up here, but they will ebb and flow based off of what my week looks like with stress levels, energy, fatigue, etc. And I want that to be known because they do shift a little bit throughout my current training block. So what does a normal week look like though? So on a Monday, we'd power clean, squat, run, and then we'll do lower body accessories. So essentially a power, strength, and like more of like a hybrid style day for building up that engine. And then we have some post-fatigue exercises that always kick my ass. Those are generally split squats, lunges, hack squats, leg presses. But this day is really fun because you start with power, you go into strength, then you go into more cardiovascular work, and these are typically like slower half miles and then very fast quarter miles or fast half miles. And then you finish off with some freaking post-exhaust work, and it just is a killer of a day because you're now training and like trying to build more strength and hypertrophy on tired legs. So it's a really fun test outside of just like the physical adaptations that you're getting from that. On Tuesday, we have something like an overhead press, tries, and we do some hammy and glute work. Now, the hammy and glute work is actually something I program for myself. So the overhead press, tries is something that Craig gives me, but I'll add in additional stuff because with these hybrid style training blocks and training days, my knees can take a serious beating. And more specifically, I ruptured my quad on my left knee in 2017, and still to this day, it's like 5 to 6 years later, the tissue around that knee can get aggravated with a lot of high threshold work. So building up my hammies and glutes kind of helps like prolong my runway of having that tissue get annoyed, swollen, etc. So that is additional work that I like to add on based off of how I'm feeling and if we're peaking, etc. On Wednesday, we'll do something like a hang clean, a front squat, and then we'll do different forms of Metcon. And so for example, this week, my Metcon is like an on the minute for 15 minutes with a fan bike, ski erg, and then I believe a row. All of those are 10 cals and essentially rip through it like a good 8, 9 out of 10 pace. And that will ebb and flow with intensity and volume based off of where we're at. This week, we're actually currently deloading, and I explained that in my training section earlier, but we are trying to take a little bit of volume and intensity off this week because my left knee is a little bit aggravated at the moment, and it's very freaking annoying because we had a good flow going, but honestly, it comes with the trade. When you're trying to push all of these things, like, you can't expect no discomfort along the way. So it is what it is, and we're gonna work through it. Thursday would be a rest day, so generally I will not train more than 3 days in a row, and even then, sometimes for 3 days in a row, that can be a lot. So for example, with power clean, overhead press, hang clean, if these are all heavier and we're starting to peak those, I'll typically take a rest day after 2 days of training versus going 3 days straight, because at the end of the day, pushing it one day isn't the biggest deal in my opinion. Friday, we go into a push press. We got pitties, that is pec/titties. I didn't want to write titties because I didn't know if that would be like offensive on YouTube or not. So pitties is what I call them. And then we have delts and arms. This is a great day for just giving yourself a nice little bodybuilding pump. I'll also add some core and hip flexor work on there too if I'm feeling a little bit tight, or if I want a little bit of additional work on the week. And then for Saturday, we go into something like deads, lats, another Metcon, and then I'll add in some like rehab, prehab work for my shoulders, hips, knees, etc., depending on how I am feeling. On Sunday, it's kind of like a rest day, but typically we'll go for a hike, so that can range anywhere from like 3 to 9 miles. Just, there's a lot of discrepancy there. It really depends on what Nikki wants to get into that week with the dogs and what the weather's looking like. On warmer days, we'll go for longer hikes, but generally my rest days are never like fully rest days. They're usually like low threshold work, so walking, doing some form of hike and whatnot. Very rarely do I just completely do nothing. If I'm really hungover some weekends, I will do nothing, and those are some of the greatest days ever. But this is what my normal week-to-week training looks like. Now, again, these days will ebb and flow. And also, the volume here can uptick a little bit. So right now I'm training 5 days a week, but if I have a ton of shoes to review, for example, I will add in a little bit of additional work there. Me and Craig try to navigate that as it comes, because not every week a ton of shoes are dropping, so it is going to be a little bit ebb and flow based off of shoe releases, but hopefully this sheds some light as to what my training looks like right now. I'm trying to build my engine, trying to run faster, and trying to move some freaking weight while looking pretty good naked, so it is a freaking kind of like cluster F of all these different goals, but I think that's what makes it fun, is trying to challenge yourself to build up all these different verticals that some folks would say like, oh, there's the interference effect, you can't do that. But in reality, like, we have such a longer runway and potential than we give ourselves credit for. So it's been really fun trying to push these. But if you have additional questions on any of this up here, drop a comment down below. All right, y'all, it is about 7:55 p.m. and I have been chugging along on my article here for the Flux Adapt High Top Trainer. We also just had a couple of waffles. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this vlog now because I'm losing steam, and honestly I just have no energy to kind of film the last couple of hours of my day before I go to bed. So we're going to cap this vlog here right now. Plus I feel like this video is already well long enough. But if you enjoyed this video, if there were any nuggets of information that you're taking away from it, let me know in the comments below. Would love some feedback. I'm not the most comfortable with this style of video, so if you found it interesting and you liked it, definitely let me know, because that would definitely help my morale based off of not necessarily loving filming vlogs. But as always, guys, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you. And if you have any questions, as always, drop them below.